With the 76th pick in the 2022 draft, the Baltimore Ravens select defensive tackle Travis Jones out of the University of Connecticut, UConn, home of what I like to call it, Paige Beckers. That's right. You've heard it right. It's Phil and Ryan on Listen Up, presented by Dempsey's and Sportsland. Ryan, we had to shift a little bit of focus, still on UConn, but now just a different sport, just for one day while we wait on our basketball discussions to resume on Monday. Very special guest, mind you, coming on Thursday. We want to shout out. We're not going to even say the high school right now because I don't want to give anything away, but we have it all coming for you right here on Listen Up. We can't wait for next week. We all know that you can't wait, but putting our focus, Ryan, on this about 10-minute episode, Ryan, defensive tackle out of UConn. You know, I called you the other day. I'm like, Ryan, it would be so cool to see or to put some focus rather on not just basketball, but other UConn sports. Right. And I said, Ryan, just think, should we cover a UConn player, non-basketball player, if they get picked in this year's draft? You said, well, we could try it out, Phil. So then a day later, they made the announcement that Travis Jones was headed to Baltimore. And I'm like, Ryan, how could we not discuss this when it's a player out of UConn, plus he's coming to our hometown team, the Baltimore Ravens?
Yeah, it was really a perfect timing when you asked the question. And then the next night he got drafted to, our local team, the Baltimore Ravens. So, and coincidence was that he came from the University of Connecticut. So, we thought we give you guys some football news instead of basketball news for a change. Let us know how you guys like it. If you want to see us do, some more some more UConn sports rather than just women's basketball, let us know how you like it. Also, let us know down below in the comments topics or ideas for all season videos that you guys might want to see, for not just women's basketball, but for any sport surrounding the UConn Huskies.
So look at this. This is very interesting. Shout out to Jamison Hensley on this because he goes over every pick and he evaluates every pick every season. Jamison Hensley does so well, a writer for the Baltimore Ravens of ESPN. He's a staff writer, Ryan. I met him many times down there at several games. Jamison Hensley is a great guy. I want to shout out to him on this specific episode. And I want to shout out to Ing Raven, because he covers the Ravens year round. I know that he'll be tuning in for this one. So I want to shout out to Ing Raven all the way down in Florida. I know that he'll be keeping his eye on Travis Jones. But I thought this was very interesting, Ryan. Mel Kiper Jr. said that Jones would have been a top 20 pick if he played at a Power 5 school. That's a very bold statement. And the only reason why I say, because I've seen, again, I use Mount St. Mary's as a perfect example. A lot of strong talent goes through the lower colleges, not the top power colleges in the nation, but a lot of strong talent goes through the schools that we rarely hear about. With that said, you and I have talked about it with the WNBA only limited to 12 teams. There's not there's a lot of talent that goes to waste. I mean, in this case, it did not go to waste. Fortunately, the Ravens drafted him, Travis Jones, that is. But Ryan, I mean, with a lot, we talked about the age factor on the Ravens defensive line. I think that with this pick, Travis Jones gets a chance to be a top starter right away.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think the Ravens are a little bit thin on the defensive line. I know they signed back Michael Pierce, released them. Things didn't really go how the Vikings wanted it when they signed Michael Pierce. But now the Ravens got him back. He was a pretty good player, in the years past. But I mean, I think Travis Jones has a good opportunity to start for the Ravens this year. If he keeps on continuing to work at his craft. He wasn't really a very high prospect because, like you mentioned, he didn't play at a Power 5 school, a really top tier team in terms of college football. Didn't really get a lot of national attention. He had 4 really good years at UConn, but he really started to turn heads at the Senior Bowl. Got an invitation to the NFL Combine. and he turned the heads of the Baltimore Ravens, and that's why they drafted him in the 3rd round.
Yeah, and we talk about how big it is. Rather, I mean, games in the NFL, I still believe they're won and lost in the trenches. You know, especially when you're running a unit like the Baltimore Ravens run. We could sit here for a half an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to discuss this, Ryan. We wish we had the time. But yeah, man. You know, again, with the way the running style, and of course with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, you have to wonder how big it is. Now, that's the offensive side of the ball. But again, the defensive side of the ball, speaking on terms of games are won and lost in the trenches, although we hear about star quarterbacks, star wide receivers, I think it's important because at the end of the day, you still have to stop the run. You still have to stop the run in the game, although we talk about how many passing yards can this quarterback get and this wide receiver. It's a pass heavy league. I get it. But again, there are still some teams. Baltimore's not the only team that continues to run the football on lots and lots of downs. With that said, with the other teams coming in to play the Baltimore Ravens, especially the Ravens, value that defense in their own home stadium. All right. They don't want to give up a lot of rushing yards. You know who set that trend way, way back when? Lewis and Reed, right? So with that said, I mean, I think it's still important to stop the run, and that's what Travis Jones has a chance of doing.
Yeah, and that's always been the top priority for the Baltimore Ravens is their defense. They stress it every single year. It's always a top priority. It's what the Ravens are known for, play like a Raven, and that starts with defense. And with Michael Pierce and possibly Travis Jones, that's a lot of size down low on the defensive line. Of course, Owe, they drafted him last year. Pretty good year. He had, very, very good player for the Ravens in his rookie year last year. But yeah, I mean, I think the Ravens defense, if everybody can stay healthy, I think last year they would have had a really good defense if everybody was healthy. But unfortunately, injuries happened to every single team, and it hit the Ravens pretty hard. But if everybody stays healthy this year for the Ravens, I think their defense is going to look pretty good. And I think there's a really good possibility that they're a top 5 defense in the NFL.
I know you remember this name, Haloti Nada. In my
Yeah.
opinion, there really hasn't been an answer. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about this current Ravens defense, this current unit, especially the guys up front. Not saying anything bad. They can still get the job done. I'm not saying they can't. But in my own opinion, it just hasn't felt the same, huh? And I'm sure you might agree.
Yeah.
Since Haloti Nada has been there, of course, Terrell Suggs on the outside.
Terrell Suggs, yeah.
So again, with that said, is this a guy, Travis Jones, that can really step up and maybe eventually, not saying right away, I understand it takes time to develop, but just maybe, Ryan, could be the leader of not only, the team. That's big. That's big words right there. Maybe not just a team, but let's just start out saying the leader of that defensive line, because you know all too well what Haloti Nada was like during his years in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge, and I think that's really what the Ravens need is somebody, to really, step in and get the job done, and kinda lead the group, even if it is just the defensive lineman group. Calais Campbell is obviously a veteran on the team, and they signed him back, I believe, for this season. But, I mean, he really hasn't brought that kind of intensity I think the Ravens are looking for. He's a solid player, but I think the Ravens need a young guy, like Owe or possibly Travis Jones now, to step up and really lead the group, and lead the future of this Ravens defensive line and get them back to, like you mentioned, with Terrell Suggs and Haloti Nada, back to those days.
It's very special. I didn't think I would do this, Ryan, coming on and talking about my Baltimore Ravens, but again, they joined forces. UConn, UConn takes in Travis Jones, and he was, I mean, he really, I was seeing some of the highlights. He really looked good during his days at UConn. I can't wait. I can't wait to see him in Baltimore, in a Baltimore uniform. I never really thought that I could actually have a chance to come on this UConn podcast and talk some Ravens football with you. So that was very special this evening.
Yeah, and Jones, he's only the 13th Husky to be selected in the first 3 rounds, so that's pretty something special in itself. And he's only the 43rd UConn Husky to ever get drafted to the NFL. and the first since 2020. Matt Peart got drafted to the Giants. So not really that many UConn Huskies that have been drafted. So it's a pretty special moment for the UConn Huskies. Like I said, since 2020 was their last draft pick that came from UConn. So hopefully Travis Jones has a good career with the Ravens. But they could definitely use it, and I'm excited to see how much playing time he gets in his rookie year.
The last day of April, Ryan, on Listen Up, and it's just that much closer until defensive tackle out of UConn, Travis Jones, hits the field, and just that much closer until Paige Beckers hits the basketball court. It's Phil and Rye on Listen Up.